Welcome to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show where we discuss all things political, bringing you top stories locally, nationally, and from around the world. I'm Tundu Abiola, and This Day Live begins now. I'd like to welcome today's panelists, Chike C. Ogea, former Commissioner for Information, and Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you, Tundu.
The latest unemployment numbers arrived just before President Muhammadu Buhari began unveiling the budget for 2019 to the joint session of the National Assembly. The presentation began with a hot exchange of words between lawmakers of APC and the President's Party and those of the main opposition, People's Democratic Party. At a point, the situation degenerated into a free-for-all during the presentation of the 2019 spending plan by President Buhari. When normalcy returned to the House, the President laid out a total budget figure of 8.83 trillion naira, about $28.8 billion. The spending plan for Africa's top oil producer assumes crude production of 2.3 million barrels a day, an oil price of $60 per barrel, and an exchange rate of 305 naira to the dollar. The spending plan is smaller than the record 9.12 trillion naira budget for 2018 that he signed into law in June. The budget must still be approved by Parliament before it can be signed into law, a process that can take many months. So what do you make of, before we get into the substance of the budget, what do you make of the reception that the President got at the National Assembly?
Well, if you ask me, I would say this is all parliamentary behavior the world over. It's just what were the limits, so to speak. We watch the Prime Minister's time every time in the UK, and we see them heckling. You know, when the opposition doesn't really like what the Prime Minister is saying, there's some kind of, but, you know, maybe guarded kind of drones and all that. But, you know, I thought maybe we took it a little bit a notch higher when you start saying the president is lying, you're lying. You
yes,
know,
in the middle of the speech. And then bringing in placards and other people snatching the placards.
That is totally unparliamentary. That is not a behavior that should be expected in those hallowed chambers at all. But definitely in a bipartisan democratic setting like we have in Nigeria, and, you know, right now, whether we like it or not, it's all about the elections. There are so many people in the chambers right now who are disenchanted because they are not even coming back. Yeah. They were either not giving their party tickets or they had lost at the primaries or something. And, you know, they don't really care anymore. So, you see, you would expect that. And that is why, you know, we should stop that culture of bringing the budget so late. You know, aside from even the effects it has on the implementation, because like we're saying, this budget they're talking about is supposed to be a medium term, long term, whatever. You know, what if this party doesn't, the ruling party, what if it doesn't come back? You know, what's going to happen to it? How many months? Is it going to even implement any aspect of that budget at all?
It might not get around to it.
You see, so those are the issues. We should try. I know it's become a culture in Nigeria, and I wonder why. We should try and, you know, maybe by June or something, the budget should be in the Assembly, where they can look at it, because whether we like it or not, that is the Constitution. They have the constitutional mandate to review those figures, what we call padding and all that, but the law allows them to...
You're calling that a review padding?
That's what I'm saying. We call it different names.
Review upwards.
Review downwards. Review sideways. You know, but it is within their constitutional duties. So to do. That's the point.
Review, not padding, though.
Review, exactly.
What did you think of that whole melee, Yemi?
I think, I mean, as Chike said, it's not, I would say not surprising. I think, if I'm not mistaken, first time president presenting to an opposition-controlled assembly, if you want to use it that, given that the Senate president is the chairman of the National Assembly. And yeah, I think it was one, nobody is saying don't protest. So you can have done it in a way, either when he came in, just, the point is to express your discontent and express the fact that we're not on the same side and we really don't approve of certain things that you're doing, or work it into the agenda for the day. I'm sure Senator Saraki could easily have given 2-3 people the opportunity to speak from the floor on behalf of the discontented National Assembly members and state your record clearly with facts and figures, not get it lost in the midst of the booing and sort of disrespect, I would say, for his office. You might disagree with him as a person in his government, but at least respect the office of the president of the country. But I thought his response was really very cute. His 2-4-4 hands basically says, hey, which it's cute, but quite frankly, actually, I think for him was also, maybe slightly childish, really, because it really wasn't necessary. And I think in him responding to their childish behavior, I think he also played to their level, yeah.
Oh dear. Do you think that it has anything to do, in actual fact, with the substance of the budget or just general discontent? Because when he was giving his speech, there were chants of lies.
Yes.
So some of the projects that he was describing...
Yes. That is a very critical point you've just raised, Tundu. Because the truth is that even me, you know, there were 1 or 2 that affected my area. Like they talked about some dam in Ogwashuku. It's not correct. I'm from Asaba. In 2015, or thereabouts, when I think that project was supposed to have started, and even the gentleman who was in the House of Reps at that time, who I think it was his pet project, he initiated it. A gentleman called Honorable Pascal Adigwe. I think he's still in the Delta State government now. You know, he knows everything about the history of that project, and you know, everybody knows that project never took off. Maybe they just gave them something, a little initial grant, and you go there. In fact, the roads to the supposed dam has already failed. Now you look at, and I think another, at least, like I said, let me talk about what concerns me. There was another reference that was made to the second Niger Bridge. I mean, that has been the butt of social media.
The Phantom Bridge.
Yeah, exactly. Social media everywhere that they said, please, you know, the Niger Bridge is crowded, so please go through the second Niger. Because there's nothing there, just 2 or 3 pillars or something. You know, so I don't know, but you see, I don't blame the president. Those people that write these things for him, did they actually take time to go around the country, collate these projects, know exactly what is where and what? Look, government is a continuum. That's why the APC government has finished those airports. I'm really in the aviation sector. That is my, you know, and I'm so happy for it because Nigeria should be the hub of aviation in Africa. And we are not.
Because West Africa. Yes. It starts with West Africa.
No, even Africa. And we are not. Because we have neglected our infrastructure for too long. So if we start improving our airports like what we are doing, we're all here. We also went Stella Odue, who was the Minister of Aviation with the Chinese people when they started the 4 major airports. Because you see, when you talk about airports in Nigeria, most of the others are aerodromes, as far, you know, but we have 4 major airports. And they started the refurbishment and, you know, building of these modern day terminals. Fine, they left it at 50%, 70%, 80%, Port Harcourt, Abuja, and the APC government has finished it. I give them all the kudos for finishing it. But we must understand that it's a continuum. But you see, so we need to find out those things. And I think that was part of what infuriated. So you can imagine many House of Reps members, many senators who go to their constituencies, you know, every now and again, and are perpetually being heckled about this project. They haven't done this, they haven't done that. And then the president comes and says all the things are complete and is listing it as part of it.
I mean,
you know?
just as you said, I think in fairness to the government, I mean, one of the aides to the president, Tolu Ogunlesi, does a pretty good job on social media of actually documenting. So there are evidence from rail to roads. There are things that they have done. And I think back to your point around understanding, and this government has over time clearly not understood strategic communication. So if you want to do a budget presentation and you want to list achievements, you don't need to list 100. List 20 solid ones that no one would have an iota of doubt that it's been accomplished, number one. Number two, back to the point I made around the Senate President have given people time from the floor to actually speak to their discontent. So you have someone who's giving you his scorecard based on what they have done, obviously not for a budget that was passed in June of this year, but a scorecard of his administration really more or less, because this is his final budget before his term is over. That's number one. You give members of the National Assembly who are discontent or content, whichever way, maybe balance it, for them to have an opportunity to speak. And then, to your point, the substance of the budget itself now doesn't... So you've heckled on the track record, so to speak, but now what you want to do doesn't even get a comment, as you're saying, in terms of what we're now talking about. We're talking about achievements, right or wrong, and we're talking about the heckling, not really the substance of,
this
okay,
is the
this is the 2019 budget that's determining what we're doing as Nigerians.
But we will not be distracted. We will look at the substance of the budget.
Fine,
now, let's start with the benchmarks, those macroeconomic benchmarks, the 305 Naira to $1 projections, 2.3 million barrels per day. The oil price, $60. How realistic is this?
Well, you see, for me, you know, I've actually worked in the budget office before, in the Ministry of National Planning, where I went in with maybe one of the greatest brains Nigeria ever had in economic planning. You know, I refer to my mentor, Chief Philip Asiodu. Yeah, I was his assistant at that time, you know, at the National Planning Commission. And one of the things I took away was that these are all estimates. So I don't really have a quarrel with them. The price of oil might not be $60. I expected output might not be whatever, you know, but there must be a range of what is expected. So the estimates for the budget are not really my issues. My issues with what you're talking about has to do with how was it broken down? What aspect of that budget has been dedicated to capital expenditure, which is the most important thing for us all, because we all know the infrastructural deficit we suffer in Nigeria is astronomical. And we need to leapfrog, you know, our development. But a situation where you're looking at almost a quarter of the budget for debt servicing, another quarter for recurrent or almost half, and then we have this little tiny aspect of capital. That, I think, to me, is what we need to reverse. Fine, it might be the situation of how things are today, and the government doesn't have a choice in that. But I know that it's simple things that need to be done. You know, we need to cut down
on the cost of governance.
And we've been saying this over. We sound like a broken record
now.
So
this is the thing. Why does nothing actually change? We have been sounding like a broken record, and yet nothing changes. Budget in, budget out, year in, year out.
It's terrible. I don't know. I mean, maybe you have a perspective to this.
But I think, for me, it's just the. I mean, if I'll take two examples. If you take Kayode Fayemi first term as Ekiti State Governor and Malame Rufai's term as right now in Kaduna, anything that you try to do that reduces the number of people that are on government's payroll, problem.
I agree.
And most governments don't do that in their first term, just because
they need to be re-elected.
Re-elected, exactly. So part of the conversation as well around having a single term for public office holders, so governors and presidents in Nigeria, because that way you come in, you can basically do what you need to get done without the fear of not coming back. That's one bit of it. Secondly, a National Assembly, again, is a big part of it, some of the cost of running government. And the way our presidential system works, you have an office in Abuja, then you need it in 36 states. You have this, so the way that where it's not run inefficiently, it's not run efficiently, but it provides, if you want to use the word, jobs for the boys. And so until we're ready to actually deal with that, and which then might support the last conversation we had around a parliamentary system, that might actually help us to the point in terms of cost.
Reduce the cost.
But it's just really the political way. I mean, there have been several, I forget what this report was called, Oshun, name escapes me, of a panel of actually merging different agencies that are duplicating efforts. I mean, people talk about EFCC, ICPC. So there might be some part of it that's specialized, but literally you can merge with agencies.
Which is what the president tried to do when he streamlined the cabinet.
That's what I was going to say.
We need more on that line.
A lot of these issues are fundamental. I mean, they go back to the Constitution. For instance, the same Constitution says we must have 36 ministers.
Yes.
It says we must have, they must all be represented. So literally, you can have 18 ministries and have one minister and one minister of state.
Fine, no problem. But
all 36 have to be
there. But 36 human beings have to be there. In a country like Nigeria, if we didn't have those kind of issues to deal with, we might just have 10 people run this government effectively and efficiently in terms of the executive, with the president and the vice president.
And then they have all their retinue of aides.
So that's my thing. So if you take the substance of their numbers, it's then the things that come with it that for me, so you can have the numbers, fine. But if you're not entitled to 28 plus 5 drivers plus 10 this, then
Exactly, that's a problem.
Overheads.
We all see them in the UK every day. We see the Prime Minister when she's going out, when she's coming in. You see her number 10, the door.
Yeah.
You see, so this, have you ever been to Aso Rock? Have you ever been to Aso Villa? You know, I worked there for a while. When you go there, you don't want to come out. Even as a visitor, I'm telling you.
I'm always just.
It's that grand.
No.
So these are the problems we have. But you see the number 10 on that house, on that door on Downing Street. It's the same as, not just very simple, it's the same as every other door on that street and every other road in London. You know, and the woman comes down from one Jaguar. And to go at the worst, maybe there will be this LR4 or something, that other Land Rover with a few.
You're looking at number 10.
You know,
the ones who like Aso Rock will tell you about the White House.
Every other minister
will tell you about the White House.
And him and himself. Even White House.
We have way too much pomp and pageantry, but we've got to move on to the next story.
We have to
Nigeria.
cut governance down.
We do. Access Bank PLC and Diamond Bank PLC ended months of speculation over their future when they finally agreed to merge, signing a memorandum of agreement which, if approved by the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Nigerian Stock Exchange, would move Access Bank, the principal partner, from number 4 to number 2 or number 1 in the nation's banking hierarchy, if the current growth trajectory of Access Bank is maintained. The boards of the two banks passed a resolution agreeing to merge, subject to regulatory and shareholder approvals. So this was the big corporate news in recent times. Yes. But how did you receive it?
Well, mixed feelings as with most of those things. I happen to know all the dramatic personnel in there. They're all my friends. You look at it, some people say it's a merger, some people say it's an acquisition. I read somewhere that when the new bank is set up, whatever comes out of it, whether it's a merger or an acquisition, is going to have the Access Bank name and the Diamond Bank logo. You know, I don't know how that will work. But the truth is that whether we like it or not, from what we can see and from what we've read over time, it was clear that Diamond Bank was the one that needed an injection of cash to stay in business. Access Bank has been professionally run. It was built organically by those two gentlemen, those young men, Herbert Mwigwe and Ige Imokwede. And I think they've done such a great job of that. Well, in the case of Diamond Bank, you know, the older Dozier, who's a consummate banker and businessman, I think he built a wonderful brand. What happened after he left? I don't know the trajectory. I don't know who's to blame where, but I know there has been successive CEOs. It's nice and easy to just keep calling the young man who is there now, who's his son, you know. I think he was in your studio not too long ago, and, you know, I think he made a lot of, you know, put a lot of light on the whole thing. But I think that let's leave all that and look at the substance of what is about to happen. If that bank comes to create, if that bank is created today, it becomes the number 2 or 3 biggest bank in Nigeria, because
that's number 1 or 2.
Oh, number 1 or 2. Okay, you see, because apparently Diamond Bank has a great base in retail banking. You know, and by the time you put that with the corporate and other strategies the Access Bank has been noted for over time, you know, you're going to have a fantastic bank. So I don't see what the problem is. I just hope that the regulatory agencies that are going to supervise the whole merger or acquisition, you know, do it professionally. Make sure that there are no job losses. Those are the kind of things we should be looking at.
That's the only danger.
Yes, really. That's the only danger, yes. And then give us another world-class bank. And Nigeria will be the better for it.
I think so.
You know? I don't know.
What are your views, Yemi? You're not looking convinced.
No, I sort of read a few reports from shareholders of Diamond that didn't seem very favorable for the merger or for the idea of the merger, the terms of the merger, and the motive behind the merger. So for me, that's the area. And I mean,
can you share some of those? Can we?
Well, because I mean, I hesitate to share them online because they've just been sort of words from either people involved. So the fact thereof, I'm not too sure. So I'd rather not. But I mean, they are in the public domain.
Because it could be actionable, man.
Exactly. But they are in the public domain for those who are interested. So I think for me, that's cause for concern. But at least the merger is subject to. So it's not sort of signed and done, but it's subject to regulatory and shareholder approval. Definitely. So they do have their moment in time to sort of state their objections or thereof. And I think for the elder Dozier, I'm really very curious for anyone to do a real interview with him of seeing what he built. Yes. And in his lifetime, this trajectory, probably not what he planned. Yeah. But it'd be very interesting to see him reflect on his years.
It would be. We had both Herbert Wigwe and Uzoma Dozie here during the week.
Yes,
and the language around the whole transaction was really conciliatory, very friendly.
Yes,
Herbert Wigwe repeatedly referred to Diamond Bank staff and stakeholders as brothers and sisters.
Yes.
Uzoma Dozie seemed very excited by this new transition, but we did ask him that this is something your father built over the past 27 years, and it's the end of an era. So I do wonder what the founder thinks.
For me, right, like I said to you, I know the older Dozie very well as well. I worked with him when I was working with Chief Asiedu. He was the head of Nigerian Economic Summit Group.
At the time?
Yeah, at the time, yes, and we were government interface to them, yes, and so I know him. He's always struck me as a pragmatic businessman. You see, the way the world is evolving, I've always told people, and that is my own, idea to these things. I'd rather own 3 or 4% of everything than own 100% of nothing, basically. You understand? So it comes to those kind of equities. That's what we're beginning to see. Yes, the man had built this brand that I'm sure he would have loved to continually. Maybe that's why they say the logo will be there forever. Who knows? Maybe that's what's close to his heart.
Acquirer.
Or be the acquirer. Exactly. I agree with you. But,
But it's that same old chestnut that rears its ugly head anytime these transactions happen with the bank. Non-performing loans.
Yes, that's it.
And I wonder, I mean, why is it that, okay, Peter Obi got some flack for citing the wrong statistics sometimes in that VP debate.
Yes.
But he did say that SMEs get, is it 0.5% of loans? That's has not been verified. But whether or not that's accurate in a scientific sense, we all know in a practical sense.
It is.
Your average Joe Bloggs cannot just walk into a bank and get a loan. But you have these massive defaulters who literally crash institutions that somebody...
And continue to borrow.
Yes, and then move on to the next. And the pattern continues.
That's Polaris' story.
So if you ask me to do, that is one of the major problems we have in our banking system. And the second one is the other one you glossed over, which we have now taken to become trite in Nigeria. And I don't know why it is so. And that is the fact that we cannot get statistics we can rely on. Everything we say yet to be verified. Why? How do you plan?
Yeah, indeed.
You can plan effectively with this kind of figures.
Yeah, indeed.
So those are the kind of things I think. And then even look at this particular situation we're dealing with. What did Access Bank do? Or what have they been doing that they did not have that kind of non-performing loans in their portfolio? So they must maybe rigidly...
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, maybe following the rules. And these other people, maybe when you give to your brother, your sister, your this, your that, then that is how the situation
your ability to recover as well.
So these are the issues. Yeah. I think we should start doing things properly in Nigeria. We're about to move into the 22nd century and we'll be doing all this.
Because somebody always pays. This is the problem. Somebody will pay eventually.
But usually, and I think that's the painful part, usually it's not the people that should pay.
Exactly.
When you cut corners and, do favors for people, you don't check what they brought as their collateral, all those kind of things. Those are the things that bring about this kind of crash.
True. And then and I think also, for me, more importantly, is the structure of sort of impunity. We talk about it in the context of politics quite a bit, but at least if you look at it also within the context of the banking sector, most cases over the last decade, CEOs have been changed, chairmen have been changed, but really, who has gone to jail, in a sense, assets get sold, but nobody actually gets...
Yes, your name is in the paper, it's embarrassing, and that's about it.
Exactly.
That's about it.